Well, I added an kind of a intro to the Ivory Salamander, and I don't know where there's a lag that people do on the you know, that. I don't do that.
Oh.
I don't know where that came from. It might have come from Beilharz. Simmons was the first person I heard do that.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter.
Sure.
It doesn't matter
because the main part of the melody is a little pull off on the C.
Yeah, but I added an intro that goes, so it goes like this.
Hands drift a little.
You know, I'm a little sloppy on it because I don't play this.
That's okay.
Hardly ever.
Definitely got the feel for what's going on.
But it's well, thank you.
Yeah.
I had that in New York when I was in New York years ago.
Oh, okay. So before we get to that, let me ask you a couple questions about the song. So when you went to the B minor thing, you came down to an A, kind of an A after that, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Also, when you went the second time around, you're hitting an F in the bass there on the way up to the G, kind of, right? That's what I just want to make sure. Yeah.
What do you do? Don't you do that?
I don't remember. You know what? When I put the lesson together on this, the first place I heard this was actually my business partner, Greg Berger. Do you remember Greg Berger?
No, not really.
Okay. He was another part of that kind of Saratoga contingent, and I think came on the scene a little bit later. So I don't know where he learned it. Is the thing. You know, so somehow it stayed around the local music scene a little bit. Because the first time I heard him playing it, he and I started a music store, a teaching business. I'd been teaching at a shop in Los Gatos, and the place went out of business, and I needed a place to teach, so I started looking for a place to rent, and I went to, do you remember the Caswells? Dwight Caswell or Chris Caswell? No. Okay, they're another kind of musical Saratoga family, and somebody told me that this guy Dwight, who was a photographer, had a space he was trying to rent for something, and I went to him and said, hey, I'm interested in setting up, I need a place to give guitar lessons. You know, I've been teaching at Union Grove down the street, and they're moving to Santa Cruz and blah, blah, blah. And this was 1979. And so he said, oh, it's funny you should come in because the only one other person's interested in the place, and he wanted to like give guitar lessons there. I thought, That's pretty weird, you know. So he said, you ought to talk to this guy. His name was Greg. And I called him up. He'd been teaching at World of Music in Cupertino. Remember that store? You know, I think it was still there when it was on. It's been in lots of different places. It was on De Anza Boulevard, which was even called that at the time. It was Saratoga, you know, Saratoga, San Miguel. Anyway, and so I called him and say, hey, you know, let's talk about this, and let's just. So we ended up just sharing the place, and you know, so I got to know him and know a little bit more about the Saratoga music scene, kind of like a little after you'd probably already gone. I mean, well, this was now in the early. This was like 72, 73 that these guys were still like in high school and hanging out and playing stuff, and they had the Caswells had like a workshop, like a place where musicians could come and play, like in their barn or in their garage. I remember going a few times when I was probably 15 or 16, and so anyway, Greg and I started this business together, just a teaching business, and I heard him play this one time, and I had no idea where, you know. Oh no, I already knew it was on the Doobie Brothers album, so I said, hey, what's that you're playing? He says, oh, it's this tune called the Ivory Salamander. I said, you know that's on a Doobie Brothers album, right? And he said, no, I didn't know that. I said, no, it is. And you know, there's like, it's a minute and a half or whatever it is. I don't know how much of it Pat played. I forget too. You know, and he was shocked to find that out. He says, oh, this is a song I remember learning from some friends like a little while ago or something, and he couldn't place. You know, your name was not attached to it at all. I mean, he just had no idea where it came from or something like that. But it probably came through Al, because these guys were you know, hanging with Al a little bit later, probably again after you. I guess you moved to New York.
Well, I remember Al liked it, but Pat also liked it, and I think I taught it to Pat. I don't remember teaching it to Al, but you wouldn't have to. He could just like watch it and remember what you were doing. But and Pat probably could too. So and I asked him recently, because it fades out, and he said he recorded the whole song. But
you're talking to Pat about that?
Yeah. But they recorded the whole song, but it faded away.
Right, because they wanted to.
The engineer faded away just for effect or something, whatever.
Yeah.
The name thing, I forgot to ask him about the name thing, because it is called the Ivory Salamander. They call it Busted Down Around O'Connelly Corner, and what that is, I think...
Here it is.
I know.
Here's the album, right?
What that is a mix-up of titles, because there was Michael O'Connelly was a guitar player in Los Gatos. He was like the best.
Yeah.
He was the best.
Alan told
of all of
them.
Okay. But he liked to get stoned, and that was his undoing, ultimately. But anyway, we all knew him, and, you know, I mean, he was the best. He literally was the best. And I kind of lifted a bunch of his licks, and I threw them all together, and I called it Hanging Around O'Connelly Corners.
Okay, so this was another little...
Right, and I think, Pat must have gotten the two names mixed up.
Oh, okay.
That's all I can think. I never bothered to ask him. I keep forgetting.
Do you remember that song?
No.
Okay.
No, I will.
Yeah, so just one that kind of came and went.
Yeah, well, it was just a bunch of, you know, O'Connelly licks, you know. Stuff like that.
Yeah.
A bunch of them. And they're really cool. I mean, they're just really cool licks. He was really good.
Wow.
You know, and I threw them together, and then, you know, I couldn't play them like, I always tried to play it too fast probably or something, but, you know, I called it Hang Around the Corner.
Trying to be as flashy as he was.
So he wasn't flashy, but that's how the names got mixed up, I'm sure.
Ah, got it. Okay.
Like
when did you speak to Pat last about this? Was it?
Oh, I know,
2 years
a couple years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
Next.
We don't talk about this or other things to talk about.
Right. No,
but I mean, we mentioned it a couple of times.
It's such kind of an oddity, you know? in just the musical world, you know, that this kind of thing happened. And of course, they put Chicago on the first album too.
That's right.
You know. Right. So it's kind of like, you know, it's kind of cool that Pat brought these, you know, things from his.
I think most people do that. I think if you were to look at it, you'd find that the Rolling Stones did that, the Beatles did that. I think you would find that it's just you don't know who those local people are.
Right.
I'll bet most people do that.
Yeah, yeah. But they turn it into their own song, like Painted Black or something, you know.
Yeah, well, I don't know, but Pat's a really good guy, you know, and he wanted to elevate the local people that he came from, and there was a time when the fame just got to be annoying, and Rainey was walking down the sidewalk in Santa Cruz one time, and the Doobies were in town or something, and the limousines coming to the gig or something, and Pat sees him and tells the driver to pull over and open up. Again, this is Chris Rainey. You know, it's like he was so glad to see somebody face, that he knew as a human being,
right?
Rather than there's Pat Simmons from the Doobie Brothers. You know, so there's that.
Yeah,
you know, that's important. That's important to everybody.
Yeah.
So.